Hello everybody. Today you're going to be taking notes on properties, and you have learned about these properties before. You've been using them probably since first grade when you first started adding numbers. We're just going to refresh your memory, go over the proper terms. So here is your notes page. This is where you are going to write everything. As you can see, you have some blank spots here and here and here, okay? You're going to, on those spots, fill in the notes that I write in the next few parts of the video. Whatever I write, you write onto your notes page. So here we go. The first property that we're going to talk about is the commutative property of addition and multiplication. You've been using a commutative property of addition since first grade, multiplication since probably third grade. So this property states that changing the order of the terms does not change the product. Or sum. I'll say sum or product. Okay? Changing the order of the terms does not change the sum or the product. So let's go over some examples of this. The numerical example of this, okay, numerical example would be with numbers, algebraic example would be with variables. That's the difference there. The numerical example, if we have 36 plus 10, that would be the same thing as 10 plus 36. Okay, so when you were in first grade and you learned about addition, you knew that if you did 36 plus 10, or you obviously didn't learn those big numbers in first grade, let's say 3 plus 2 is 5, and 2 plus 3 is also 5. Okay, and then for our multiplication, that's addition, obviously, commutative property of addition. This would be commutative property of multiplication. 15 times 30 is the same thing as 30 times 15, okay? Doesn't matter which way you multiply that, you would still get 450. Algebraically, if I added a plus b, that would be the same thing as b plus a. Okay, and for multiplication, a times b, okay, when you have two variables next to each other, that means multiplication. So a times b is the same thing as b times a. And that's your commutative property of addition and multiplication. Okay, I also wanted to just mention that the commutative property is only two terms. The next property we're going to talk about is the associative property of addition and multiplication, and that's more than two terms. Okay, similar idea. Changing the grouping of the terms does not change the sum or product. That's what it means. Changing the grouping of the terms doesn't change the sum or product. Same, pretty much the same, except for you have more than two terms. I have to apologize for my handwriting. It's sometimes difficult to write with this stylus. Okay, so a numerical example, our example in numbers, if we had 36 plus 10 plus 5, okay, according to my order of operations, I should do 36 plus 10 first and then add 5. But since it's all addition, I could use the associative property of addition, and I could add, instead of doing 36 plus 10 first, I could add 10 plus 5 first, and then add that to 36 if I wanted to. okay? Part of the reason why you would use this property is to make the addition or the multiplication easier, okay? Multiplication, if I did 15 times 3 times 2, that dot is also another way of multiplying, just so you know in case you weren't aware of that. I could do 15 times 3 times 2. So I could do 3 times 2 first and then multiply by 15, or I could do 15 times 3 first and then multiply by 2. Okay, depending on the way the problem is given to you, you may want to change up the way you add or multiply. Now this only works if it is all addition, like it is here. See, this is all addition, or all multiplication. You can't go any way you want when you have more than one operation. Okay, and again, this helps you to move around terms to make the addition or the multiplication easier. For the commutative property, sometimes you just know some facts quicker in different ways. So when you were learning your multiplication facts, 6 times 8 is 48. It rhymes. You might have learned that first. And then when you got to 8 times 6, well, you already know 6 times 8 was 48, so 8 times 6 is 48. Okay, algebraically, for the associative property, we have A plus B plus C is the same thing as A plus B plus C. Okay, it doesn't matter which one you add first, and I'm going to show you at the end we could simplify expressions as well. Okay, multiplication, you can multiply A times B first and then multiply by C, or you can multiply A times B times C, and you could do the B times C first and then times A. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so that is the associative property of addition and multiplication. The next property is the additive identity property. Again, something you've known about since probably first grade. And this property states when 0 is added, I cross my 0 so you know it's not an O, it's a 0, is added to any number, the sum is the number. Okay, so you keep your identity. That's why the way I remember it. Additive identity number. Any number added to 0 is that number. It keeps its identity. Example for that, 25 plus 0 is 25. Algebraic expression, A plus 0 equals, no matter what A is, it's going to equal A because it's added to 0. That's the additive identity property. Multiplicative identity property is similar. It's when any number is multiplied by 1, the product is the number. Okay, the number keeps its identity. Sorry about that. So again, when any number is multiplied by 1, the product is the number. Okay, so when you multiply by 1, the number keeps its identity. Numerical example, 8 times 1 is 8. A times 1, oops, sorry, that's a little sloppy, is, no matter what A is, it's going to be A. That's the multiplicative property, multiplicative identity property. The multiplicative property of 0. when any number is multiplied by 0, the product is 0. Keep doing that over there. Sorry, guys. When any number is multiplied by 0, the product is 0. So, 8 times 0 is 0. A times 0 is 0. Any number multiplied by 0 is 0. Again, all of these things that I just showed you, I know that you know them. But I'm just trying to show you why you might use them and why they come in handy. So, that's why you would care about these properties, because it makes math easier at times. Let's try some different examples. Okay, for this next part, we are just going to name the property. So 3 times 10 is the same thing as 10 times 3. Which property would that be? Okay, so it doesn't matter which way you multiply the two terms, you're still going to get the same answer. That would be the commutative property of multiplication. And we are going to write out the whole word. And I know it might be hard to spell. I have a hard time myself. But I do want you to write it out. Commutative property. And you do have to say that it is of, and in this case, if it would be addition, it would be adding. But since it's multiplication, it's the commutative property of multiplication. Okay, number 2. We have 2 plus 5 plus m, and then it's the same thing as 2 plus 5 plus m. Okay, that property would be, give you a minute, think about it. You could look at your notes that you just took. I have 3 different terms that I'm adding, and it doesn't matter which way I add them, I'm still going to get the same sum. So that would be the associative property of addition. And again, we're going to write that out. Associative property of addition. Okay, next one, we have 17 times 1 equals 17. So, any number multiplied by 1 . If I was going to add 12 plus 15 plus 8, I would do that by getting to maybe a multiple of 10. So I would add 12 plus 8 first, because that will give me 20. And then I'm going to add that to 15, because that's nice and easy to do in my head mentally, 35. So I know you're doing this mentally, but I'm showing why or how I would add them mentally to make this easier. Okay? For number 5, you might multiply, instead of 25 times 100 times 4, I mean, it's pretty simple either way, but if you multiply 25 times 4, you get 100, and then 100 times 100, all you have to do is add your 4 zeros on, 10,000. Okay, that would be the associative property of multiplication. Number 4 is the associative property of addition. Number 6, I have 19 times 0 times 32. Okay, well, I'm multiplying numbers times 0. Any number times 0 is 0. So if you look at this problem, you don't even have to do the 19 times 32. Your answer is 0. That would be, which property would that be? That would be the multiplicative property of 0. Okay? And those are your notes for today. We will go over the next part together so that you can practice with me in class. If you have any questions, please write them down. Have a great day.